I'm gonna be a very modest person, but not too modest, because I mean I don't want to reveal too much, but I'm gonna put myself at a solid 8.
Wow.
Modestly,
okay.
huh?
Okay.
For Thursday, November 12th, 2015, this is All Downhill. This episode, Nate Gutman on horror.
All right, so I'm Patrick Simmons.
And I'm Mike Little.
And we have here with us Mr. Nate Gutman, author, musician, podcast host, very good friend.
Hello.
Has nothing to say for himself.
He's just going to sit here the whole episode. We're going to talk about him.
But we're not going to let him say anything. Yeah, that's how we decided to do this.
I'm just a fly on the wall. A build-a-fly on the wall.
Oh,
wow.
Wow. Those segues, though.
I'm a host of my own podcast, so I'm the master of segues.
I should be fair here. We're cheating, because at the beginning of the month, I thought it's National Novel Writing Month. Wouldn't that be a great time to get at least one person who's written a book on the show? And so I have to ask, I might not be cheating, I'm not 100% sure. Is Bill the Fly novel length?
It is novella length.
Novella length, okay.
Yes.
Oh, so we're just going to cut him off here and find someone who's actually written something novel length.
Okay, I have written things novel length, but they are not for the reading public. So I have so many things on my computer that no one is ever going to see that are 80,000 words and up, but they suck. So
that's the thing. Like I've tried to write things before, and I'm pretty sure Pat has too. Like during NaNoWriMo, stuff like that. Just in general, I just can't do it. I'm just too lazy. I think I get to a certain point. I'm like, this is good. I'm just not gonna write any more of it. Fuck this.
Well, it's so good you don't want to touch any more of it. You're just like, if I touch it, I know it's gonna be bad eventually.
Well, is that a problem you had working, if not on Bill the Fly itself, but working towards it? Do you have like a zillion dead manuscripts that just on the way to Bill the Fly you went, I'm not finishing this one?
Yes. To answer the short question, or the short answer is yes, yeah. Because I only write when I'm excited about it. And so when I start to lose my excitement or like my original idea for writing starts to dwindle away, I'll often look at it and be like, you know what? I don't know where I'm going with this. This thing sucks. And then I'll stop writing it. But with Bill the Fly, I liked it all the way through. And so I was like, this is the first one I actually want to put out to the world. Because the rest of them, I started out with an idea that I think is good. And I start writing it, and I get probably 20,000 words in, roughly. That's the average. And then I'm like, I don't know what the hell I'm doing with this thing. And it just sits there. And that's all right, because it's practice.
Yeah, so basically, for those of we kind of did the thing where if you listen to, real professionals doing this, they ask the author what the book is about first before asking them how they wrote it. So what's your book about for those that haven't read it?
All right, well, Patrick probably knows a lot about it. He wrote a novella-length comment himself on the Amazon. It was a great comment. I mean, it was fair and balanced, just like Fox News.
It did take me longer to read his comment on Amazon than it took me to read the novella. Actually, I didn't read the novella. I skimmed it because I had some issues with the Amazon reader. So I know basically what happens, but I won't claim to have read it all the way through, which I will. But I had issues with it for a while.
Yeah, well, you know what? That's why you gotta stick with the old paper, the old stand-in. Classic.
No one uses paper books anymore. They're dead.
The trees are the ones that die. Anyway. Rip. So, Pat wrote a novella-length comment that I would implore all you guys to read because it was a fair and balanced review of the book from a very unfair and balanced... It's balanced, but very unfair because it's coming from me, who's very biased towards it. It is a dark humor novella, more of a kind of satire on the common horror tropes. Very surreal, very tongue-in-cheek, concerning a 30-something-year-old bachelor and this talking fly that he meets one of these days when he's living his lonely bachelor life. And things happen, guys. Murders involved. I don't want to give too much away. You need to read it yourself. But it's funny. It's weird. There's a lot of dream sequences, a lot of strangeness that will probably turn half you guys off from it, but It's
so
good. I like
it's Donnie Darko.
I think of it as Kafka-esque. If I'm gonna, because if you guys are cultured, and I assume you are, if you're interested in reading this book, you're gonna understand what Kafka-esque means. It's Kafka-esque. A big influence was Confederacy of Dunces. So think of it as something with Confederacy of Dunces with Kafka weirdness thrown in, and we can't forget my old favorite, good old David Lynch. I was super into Twin Peaks when I was writing this.
So Confederacy of Dunces is a J-pop
it should
album?
be, because that would be great. But it's a book by John Kennedy Toole, I believe. I'm not quite. It's
the
John
president?
Toole something. No.
Was it like, I'm assuming it was before he got shot?
Yeah, it was before he got assassinated. So he wrote this really funny book that he just knew. I think when he was writing it, he was like, gosh, I know there's going to be this guy. He starts with an N. He's going to live way past my time because I know I'm going to get shot and killed. But he's going to write a book, and he's going to be on a podcast, and he's going to quote this book. So I better make sure it's good. That was his thought process in writing it, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I mean, it's a great book. You should read it. And read Bill the Fly. Read the Bill the Fly first. No.
Okay. See, that's the funny thing. Like, this is what all authors do, and I've noticed this. The more I listen to, like, All Things Considered, like, during my lunch break.
Sure.
So I listen every once in a while. Like, they always have authors on, and they always do this thing where they're like, oh yeah, it was heavily inspired by, and it was like 5 or 6 books that you've never fucking read in your life. And you could tell that, like, Terry Gross or whoever's doing the fucking interview is like, oh yeah, that book. You could tell in her voice she's never even heard of that book.
Well, so now here's a question, because you jumped straight ahead. You answered the next obvious question. Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, I know in some of your short fiction, you've mentioned before sort of an interest in Lovecraft. And did any of that find its way into Bill the Fly, or in Bill the Fly were you kind of moving in a different direction from that?
Lovecraft's definitely a huge influence for me. I don't think it has a whole lot of influence on Bill the Fly, because I was kind of going with a more tongue-in-cheek, kind of humorous feel. But definitely my shorter stuff, very Lovecraftian, I'd feel, with just, like, monsters. And what I really like about Lovecraft is he's not just painting this, like, monster coming out to get you, like a slasher film kind of thing. It's like this otherworldly... if I even look at it, I go insane because I can't comprehend it, because it's so removed from, so of nature, so of the world, but also so otherworldly. So I really like that theme, and I think that theme probably comes through, not so much in Bill the Fly though, but definitely in a lot of the other things I've written. So
okay.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Bill the Fly has definitely, though, its otherworldly elements. I mean, you yourself, as you said, and as I'm sure is not a spoiler to say, the book is about a talking fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's hard to not call that otherworldly, at least to a degree.
You never talked with the fly before, Pat?
Where did you get the idea for a talking? We're like, that's the real thing I want to know. Why talking fly?
Yeah.
That's actually a really interesting story, and this might reveal too much of my inspiration and then take away from my own creative genius to the masses, how they view me. But I actually got the idea because I was reading some article, I don't know if it was on something really casual, I just stumbled upon it. It was about a woman, like an elderly woman, and she crashed her car, like off this ravine or something, and it got pinned between these trees, and she was trapped inside of her car for like 2 or 3 days, and she actually started talking to this fly that was in the car because she kind of got like crazy, like the things that happen when you're in like solitary confinement or something like that. Okay. And I just liked that idea a lot because I thought that was such a weird creature to be talking to. That was definitely like the impetus of it. It's like, all right, let's move on with this. So it was just a really cool idea that I liked, and so I kind of moved on from there.
I mean, the obvious choice would have been to have, be a giant talking rabbit, but I mean, this is good too.
Oh, of course, yeah.
The Darko comparisons just aren't gonna stop.
I mean, or like if you go back even further, Harvey. But either way.
Oh, God.
I mean, think of
it's
Donnie Darko without Frank being so creepy and more saying curse words and a lot of him just not being so just creepy, I guess.
How much of the main character is secretly you?
A lot of it, actually.
And there you have it. Ladies and gentlemen, author Nate Gutman admits to talking to flies.
I don't talk to flies, but I do. Jacob Kingsley is the main character's name. And I kind of like him a lot because he's kind of... And my wife read it, and she didn't really get it. But a lot of the other people that I've given the book to that are especially male can kind of relate with him. He's basically all of the laziness, a lot of just getting by, and a lot of just the bad qualities that I think a lot of, especially millennial young adult males have. And so he's kind of like a hyperbolic, version of that, but to a very deplorable degree.
So what you're saying is basically this book is for white cisgendered males,
exactly,
and everyone else can't read it.
No, everyone else. I think everyone else can read it. It's just who it's a critique of.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is the thing. I write what I know. I'm a white cisgendered male, and I'm gonna write that. And the world be damned if they.
Breaking news: Gutman is a white cisgendered male.
Yeah. Breaking news: he's also an author.
Okay, so I've got one more question about the book before we sort of expand out. But one reviewer mentioned compared your book to Kambou, and there was a comment on that review from someone who interestingly didn't review it themselves, but who basically said the person who compared you to Kambou said your character is like Kambou except is better because your book isn't as absurdist. So even though your characters delve into the sort of surrealism Kambou does, they never reach the point of absurdism Kambou does. And the person who commented on the review said basically, well, the book is awful because of that exact reason, because he never reaches Kambou's heights or things.
I wonder what you thought of that entire thread, because I usually go on there and look at that, but I remember seeing someone compare it to Kambou, but I do not remember a conversation after that.
Well, the conversation ends there. Yeah. There's only one comment on it, and the comment's never responded to. But the person, they say basically, Kambou's great, you're awful. It's a horrible comparison. Kambou's spitting in his grave because absurdism is sort of the whole point of Kambou, and you've clearly missed that.
I remember reading that comment, and I remember thinking, like, oh, I wasn't... Like, I mean, the references or that I've mentioned, like David Lynch, Twin Peaks, Confederacy of Dunces, that was something that I was definitely actively thinking, that this is I actually think this is in the book somewhere. Kambou wasn't, so I don't really know what they're seeing Kambou in it, because everything that I've read, and I haven't read a whole lot, he wrote Clockwork Orange, right?
No.
What did he do with that? Alright, my bad.
No, that's fine. That's Anthony Burgess.
Burgess?
Is it Burgess?
So what does Kambou do then? Maybe I haven't read anything from him. And to answer the question then, I don't think it has much of a influence on Kambou, because I don't know who the guy is, apparently.
Okay,
so,
okay.
I can't say
for what it's worth. You might like him, but I don't. Yeah, okay, but that at least establishes that good.
He's not an active member of an influence on this. No. Just talk a little bit on the surreal side. I think I'm a big fan of surrealism, but I'm not a big fan of making these broad societal claims, like using surrealism in like the tongue-in-cheek kind of thing. I think the surrealism, it's all from, in the book especially, it's all from Jacob's point of view. So I think it's more just a reflection of how he's feeling about different things. So it's more of a much more character-driven, like personal kind of thing. But another person that I forgot to mention was that definitely influenced me a lot is Philip K. Dick, the science fiction writer.
Oh, okay.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, he's huge for me, just because he has a lot of the surrealist kind of things, and basically him and David Lynch basically showed me that you don't have to make everything so tidy and neat. You can kind of just put it out there and people will come up and form their own opinions. And I think that's something that's really cool about literature and about art in general. Putting forth the ideas is more important than telling people what to do with them.
Would you disagree then with people who say, no, my art is about this? Like, who really protest when people, like, misconstrue their art in a certain way? Would you say that's wrong of them to tell people who've read or viewed their work to say, oh no, that's not what it's about, you're wrong? Is that valid?
I think both's happening at the same time. I think, honestly, an artist saying this is what my work's about should be taken a lot more than some critic or some just person saying, no, this is what it's about. I think you need to give credence to the artist when he tells you what it's about, just because he has intimate knowledge about it. He's the one who created it. But to say that an artwork can only be seen from the artist's point of view is not accurate either. I think objectively what the art is speaking to people, and to anyone really, that has a validity to it. And I think that first and foremost, yes, what the artist says the artwork's about should be listened to, but it's the same kind of like with, I think, Fahrenheit 451. Everybody deemed that as against book burning and stuff like that, but he really was against modern technologies and television and stuff. And he has a complete different view of what that book should be than what the normal consensus is. And
that was one of the books I was actually had in mind when I asked you that question. Yeah.
And I think, obviously you can look at it from the artist's perspective and say, well, this is how it should be. But I think looking at that too strictly is missing all the nuances and what that work actually means. So I think both's happening at the same time, and they're both valid.
Wow, biggest fucking cop-out answer of all
I'm
time.
just saying, my problem is that's a really reasoned answer.
Right.
It's a really reasoned answer.
It is.
Which sucks because it's hard to make fun of, but so instead I'm going to make fun of it like this.
Please do.
So you're saying while it's not necessarily right, it's okay that I interpret your book as a guide down on how to have sex?
Yeah, no, there are definitely some pretty, I think you should think of it as a guide how not to have sex. Because he's pretty fucking terrible at viewing women and any kind of sexual desire. Like, anything he does, don't do it. Because he's terrible. He's a terrible character. So don't listen to him, Jacob Kingsley.
Well, and so, you know, since Nathan Gutman can see himself to a large degree in that character, he himself is a terrible person.
You're writing yourself in the holes.
Wow, look at him squirming.
You know what? I'm not even gonna dodge that one because I think that there's a little bit of depravity in everybody, whether they like to admit it or not. And I think being the moral person is not giving in to that. But you have to admit that there's a darkness within us all. As
someone who has had the excellent fortune to sit down and have a few too many margaritas with acclaimed author Nate Gutman, I can say I think I'm aware of that.
It's okay. We wear our darkness and depravity on our sleeves here at All Downhill.
Hey, I think it takes a bigger person to admit it and to let it out every once in a while. Just as an example for the rest of the world.
So you mentioned Philip K. Dick. So especially in Dick's more surreal works, he admits were heavily influenced by Dick's brief period of just tremendous drug use. So A Scanner Darkly being a great example. So, of course, the question has to come, how much of your writing is influenced by your drug use?
Actually, none of it, actually. I mean, I don't do drugs. I stay clean. Dare, guys, okay? But I do.
Do you have X's
alcohol
tattooed on the back of your hand? Because if not, then get off your fucking high horse. If you're not straight edge, fuck you.
He's drinking with us.
I'm drinking with you guys, and I do enjoy drinking a lot. But I actually find that I can't write very well when I'm drunk. Like, I need to write sober. And I've tried it, too. I'm just like, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to have a few drinks, and I either don't like what I'm writing, or I feel like the words aren't flowing as well. Probably just because I'm just more drunk, but I have to write it completely sober. And that's when all the weird, surreal ideas come in anyway. So it's a little opposite than what I guess.
Yeah, write sober or get pulled over.
Oh man, there you go.
Before I ask my expanding question, I just thought of another one, and it's not my fault. I'm not trying to halter things. It's actually your wife's fault. I hear what I assume in the background is your wife putting dishes away. What influence does she have on your writing?
She is my muse. She's actually a fantastic editor because I make her read everything that I write, and then she comes up with a lot of very good ways to make it flow better. So she actually came up with the idea for the ending, which actually Pat specifically didn't like. So, but and I was like, that's a much better emotional high point. So I decided.
Would it be a spoiler for you to tell us then if she came up with the idea for the ending? How was it going to end before your wife came up with the ending?
I just had an epilogue kind of thing. She just decided when to cut it to the ending. Because I had things that came out after that, and she actually put forward the idea, and I agreed that it was a little superfluous. So we decided to just cut it
Peter Jackson's Return of the King?
Oh, yeah.
So when you release the special edition of Bill the Fly, there's going to be like 30 endings, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'd actually look forward to that.
In actuality, there was about 10 extra pages that are just cut out.
Which
considering the size of the book,
that's a lot.
Yeah, that's a fair amount.
Okay.
If you would like, I could give you. Well, actually, I'm not going to give this away because now I've decided that I want people to read the book. So
that's fair. I think that's totally fair. Well, and maybe this is the kind of thing that. So this is a good moment to bring it in before I ask the next question. I'll just do it right now.
Oh my god.
No. This is. I think you and I both could agree on that. This is a good point for it.
Yeah. No. I agree.
So for those of you listening, if you'd like to read Bill the Fly, you can get it on Amazon. Mm-hmm. And your website, it's NateGutman.com, right, Nate?
Yep.
Okay, so people can go to NateGutman.com and you can find all of Nate's books. You can find Bill the Fly, and I assume more will be coming eventually.
Yeah, more will be coming. And I wanted to also say, first of all, disclaimer, I'm terrible at talking about these kinds of things. So if you've listened to me and be like, this guy wrote the book and he doesn't even know what the fuck he's talking about, and I've just completely unsold my book, I apologize. The best way to know a book is just to read it. So pick it up. But I'm actually going to be giving away the Kindle version for free on Black Friday only. So
wow,
the day of Black Friday, it will be.
Well, that's
going to
make
download.
Our fucking contest useless that we were just going to announce.
No, it's not.
No,
it's
the
not,
physical version, and this is only for one day. So anybody that knows it for one day, they can get the Kindle version. But the physical version that you guys are giving out, that's like way better value.
Well, and it's signed, correct?
Yeah, and it will be signed. That's a huge deal. Because I mean,
yeah.
So when he becomes like bigger than
author.
Stephen King, you'll have a signed copy of his I guess introductory like first real novel or novella that he published on Amazon.
It's first in print, right?
Yeah,
it's your first in print. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for those of you listening, as you've obviously picked up on, to our wonderful listeners, as an attempt to sort of build some publicity for All Downhill, as well as for Nate Gutman, who really is a great author. Despite if you do end up reading my Amazon review, despite what I say, he really is great, and there's a lot there. I'm just unjustifiably harsh towards everyone.
No, I thought it was fair. I think the things you brought up. I mean, obviously, the book is brilliant. It's genius. It's a work of a classic work of art. But what Pat brought up is a valid point that someone could definitely have an argument with. And so I was very glad to read that as the author of the book and saying, hey, let's see like a fair and balanced review.
So there you go. But whether or not you want a fair and balanced review, you should buy the book. You should pick it up, especially because the Kindle version is $4. It's $3.99. It's $3. It's $2.99, right?
Yeah, I think it's $2.95 or something like that.
$2.95. Okay, so it's very cheap for the Kindle version if you really don't want to put investment into it, and if you do want to put investment, and if you really don't want to, wait till Black Friday. You can get it for free. Mm-hmm. But if you're the kind of person, as Nate, I know you are, who prefers print, it's $7.95 on Amazon for the print edition. Not bad. But right now on All Downhill for 2 weeks only, you can win a signed print copy by Nate Gutman himself, signed by Nate Gutman himself. Our contest is running from the release date of this episode, November 12th, up through November 26th. That's 2 weeks. All you have to do is go to alternative-internet.com/alldownhill. We'll have the full, everything you need to do to enter there. But basically the way it works is if you visit us on Facebook, you get an entry. You don't have to like us. We'd love it if you do, but you just have to visit us. If you follow us on Twitter, you share the contest on Twitter, you subscribe to the podcast, you visit the podcast page on iTunes, you pin us on Pinterest, you get entries for all that. You also get entries for visiting our site. You can get one a day for doing that. You'll get entries for sharing the giveaway with other people, and you'll get a ton of entries for that. And you get entries for answering questions about the show. We're going to have a question about this episode. We're going to have a question about our past episode. But we're not going to give you a timestamp or anything. You have to listen to the episode to find the answer, and there's a ton of entries for that. So basically, as an appreciation, our appreciation to you for listening and for sharing the show with people, we're going to give away a free signed copy of Bill the Fly to somebody. So again, visit alternative-internet.com/alldownhill for that. Or if you really can't wait, or if you don't win, visit NateGutman.com or search Bill the Fly on Amazon, and you should find the book. But you can get the book at both of those places. And NateGutman.com has the added bonus of you can also check out To Eat Perchance to Dream, Nate's awesome podcast. I'm on an episode, so you should check it out.
I'm not, so Halloween fuck these two.
And you can find Nate's EP, Scrap Paper, which is awesome. You've heard music from it in this episode. It's our intro song for this episode. It comes from Scrap Paper. And we'll both vouch for that's a great EP. Totally worth checking out. It's only $5. You can easily pick that up, and you absolutely should. So with that said, I'm going to segue out of the ad back into the show. Actually, on that note, because here's my other question for you, and this is how we're going to branch into topics that aren't just about you, but this is the part where we just have you on the show to talk about stuff.
I appreciate that because I don't like talking about myself too much. You know, I'm a brilliant author, but
I'm opening it with a question about you. And when you write, you're a musician. When you write, do you listen to music? And if so, what kind? Is it the kind of thing you play, or do you not listen to music at all?
I definitely listen to music almost every time I write.
So do you listen to your own music or your own style, or do you listen to something? Because your music is very, for the listeners who don't know, when you go check out Scrap Paper, you'll realize this. Nate, in addition to Bill the Fly, a good example would be A Miracle Repeat, which is featured in Hello Horror, Journal of Horror Stories. It's very good. It's a great story. But if you go find, like, a lot of your short stories, your published story, they're very, dark. Mm-hmm. If not outright horror, they're at least dark.
Yeah.
And your EP, meanwhile, is...
It's peppy.
It's peppy indie love song kind of thing, yeah.
Yeah, it is. That's kind of just the only music that I can really write. And I wish that I could branch out and get something... Because I listen to a lot of different things. And when I'm writing, I generally don't listen to that kind of thing. I listen to stuff like Massive Attack or Portishead, a lot of trip hop, a lot of...
I can dig that.
I listen to a lot of stuff like that. Kind of like the more chill kind of things. It's not too distracting when I'm writing, but... Definitely along the darker tone kind of thing. So it kind of fits more with the fiction that I write more than the music I write. Just because the music, I mean, that's about all I can write musically. And I try to write other things that it just doesn't, I don't like it. It doesn't come out good.
I'm sure you've seen a horror movie. We've all seen enough of them.
I've seen a horror movie, yes.
Where actually, A Clockwork Orange, you mentioned the book earlier. It's a great example, movie-wise, even though it's not horror, of a film where the music is specifically in stark contrast with the imagery, and that the music's light and peppy and the imagery's horrible and dark. Mm-hmm. Have you ever considered, like, giving yourself a story where you can do that with your music? Where you can go, here's my light, peppy love songs set to horrible murder.
I'm not averse to it because I do like that kind of thing. We'll see what happens. I've actually been toying around with a new writing project and maybe releasing an album like alongside of it, kind of like inspired by it. Not that you necessarily need to listen to it while you're reading it, but something that just a very emotive kind of just, this is the feel of what I'm writing, and this is the feel of like what I'm listening to, and this is what, just trying to grab that. So I might, and hopefully I'll get something, if not next year, then the year after that, because I'm writing it right now, but I have a couple ideas. So, yeah, something like that. So far, the folksy stuff is the things that come very easily for me, and so that's what I've done thus far, but I'm trying to branch out eventually. Okay.
Well, since we didn't get to have Nate on for Halloween, this is what I want from both of you, and I'm happy to give my answer. And I'll accept a movie, a book, or if you want to give both is fine, but I'm not going to accept a play or an album because obviously you have to draw a line somewhere. Mm-hmm. What do you think is the best either horror film, book, or both of all time? And briefly, why?
Oh, man.
It doesn't have to... It can be... You can give your favorite and say it's the best because it's my favorite. I'm fine with that. But you can also say it's the best because it's significant even if it's not my favorite. I'm willing to accept either. And if either of you have trouble thinking of one or the other, you can, please pass and come back.
See, this is why I'm glad I let Mike go first.
Yeah, see, that's exactly it. I think... And this is... I think some people might get really salty with me on this. And this is nowhere near my favorite horror movie. But I think it's probably the best horror movie out there. Scream 4.
When you said that, I'm running through my head. What's he gonna pick?
Did you end up at Scream 4 too? Because
I ended up nowhere near Scream 4. I thought of all the things you were gonna pick. I thought you were gonna pick something that's not aged well. I was expecting Nosferatu. To be honest.
No, it's not. Those movies were good. I think they were ahead of their time, some of those. And I was actually about to say, M. But I, at the last second, changed to Scream 4 because, one, it takes all of the great things that Scream did, compounded on them, made them even better. It's relatively new, but it still ages well in comparison to all of the Scream movies. Screams 2 and 3 were comedies, let's just face it. They were good movies, but
Scream
they were comedies.
1's a comedy.
Scream 1 is a comedy, but Scream 4 had something that you don't really see. It was scary pretty much throughout the whole movie. It was funny throughout the whole movie. The acting wasn't god-awful. It was actually, in some cases, it was very good. Okay. And in a way, it capped off probably the greatest modern, I guess, franchise of horror movies. And it was mainstream enough that everyone can really appreciate it. It did things with horror that really no one else did. And I think, and this isn't even because, Wes Craven's dead, I have to give him a nod. No, I really think that Scream 4 might be one of the best horror movies ever made. Just simply because it did all these things. And it's really rare in horror where a sequel is better than the predecessor. Okay. Or even, like in Scream 4's case, previous 3 movies, which Scream 1, it's classic, man. Even though it was only done in 1991, I really think that Scream 4 probably is one of the best movies. You can just pick it up, you can put it in, you can watch it. It's Halloween, what do I want to watch? Obviously, I'm going to watch Trick or Treat, because Trick or Treat is a Halloween movie.
Sure.
That's my tradition.
But
I watch
generally
Trick or Treat.
any time in the year.
But any time in the year. If I want to watch a horror movie, but I don't want to get so into it that I am I don't want to watch Martyrs every day of the year, even though it's probably my favorite horror movie of all time. I don't want to watch It Follows every day of the year, even though, again, it's probably my top 5 now after watching it. But sure. Scream 4, because it has so much shit in it, where it's comedy, horror, well done dialogue. It speaks to my generation too, in a way that some of the older horror movies can't. But again, I will have to say though, I was almost about to pick M, because that's a fucking great movie.
Now, do you have a book too, or is it just the movie? You gonna stick with just the movie?
A book? Ooh, man,
You can pass to Nathan.
Yeah,
if you
I can
want
pass
to
to
come
Nate.
back.
Yeah, I
Okay,
might
so
come back to
Nathan,
that. Yeah, go ahead, Nate.
Okay, I'm gonna admit straight up that the classic horror movies like Scream, Halloween, like I have a very blind spot on those. For some reason, I didn't watch them when I grew up, but I do have a lot of horror movies that just like speak to me and I like a lot. And actually, I think one of my favorites, I'm not sure if this is actually, because it's not the same as like a Halloween or like Friday the 13th or something, but Rosemary's Baby. It's like so scary and so good. I love it. Rosemary's Baby is fantastic because...
Wrong, but go ahead.
Okay, I would like to hear why Mike thinks it's wrong.
No. I want to hear why you think it's right first.
Okay. I really enjoy... I think... And a lot of like modern thrillers kind of mess with the idea, but I think that movie perfectly encapsulated like the idea that like there's a reality, because obviously she's like not sure if like this is something supernatural going on or she's going crazy, and that's like a common trope with thrillers kind of thing. Like, is this person actually just insane, or are these like weird things happening real? But that movie does it to such a great degree that you really can go absolutely 50-50 either way. You're like, either it's 100% supernatural and she's not crazy, or she's just losing her mind. And I don't know, for me, it was right along that line. I was right there going like, I have no idea what to think about this. And the tension was built so well. And I do have a penchant for disturbed sexuality kind of things. I think they're very interesting and weird. And so I like that whole thing about it. And I mean, it's not a horror movie, because I didn't walk away from it going like, oh, I was so scared watching it. But I was definitely involved, and the suspense was there, and I was just on the edge of my seat the entire time. And the ending actually was kind of a letdown for me, but the ride there was fantastic. And so that one comes to mind immediately. Another one that comes to mind actually is one that I watched with Pat, the Thai Shudder.
Oh, sure.
That was really great. And I think, and also on that note, also the Babadook was really good, and I think.
But don't do too much. I haven't seen it yet.
I haven't seen that one either.
Okay, I'm not gonna tell you anything about the plot or anything, but the common thread between Shudder and the Babadook is very scary images, like very well done horror movie, but also has a very like deep like symbolic kind of story that goes along with it.
Okay,
and that's kind of what draws me in to like really good horror, is this kind of, and both with Shudder and Babadook, there's like a metaphor kind of going on in the background for why these things are happening, and it's really interesting, and I appreciate those kinds of things a lot more than just the constant jump scares and just the horror tropes. So I do like the horror tropes, but when they are backed by like a really good story and a very good like metaphor or like a meaning behind them, I like them a lot. So Shudder and Rosemary's Baby are the two things that come to mind, though.
I can see Shudder. I mean, Rosemary's Baby, though, like, I just, I don't think I got out of it what you got out of it, because all I could see when I saw that movie was just this scumbag asshole dude who's abusing his wife. They're not very good at acting. I could tell that there was something funky with these people across the street from the beginning. It just didn't build the tension for me that it did, because I feel like I just saw through it so quickly. I knew, it's like, and when the first time I saw it, I knew nothing about the movie. I'm like, oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, I went into it blind too.
Yeah, I went into it blind. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I don't know what this is about, but I'm like, she's gonna have the devil's baby. Like, in the first, 3 minutes of the movie. And then it was just like, oh, all right, well, this is so obvious. And I'm just sitting there waiting for there to be satanic shit, and then it didn't come soon enough. I liked the ending, personally, a little bit more than I think you did, because I'm like, I was waiting for it to happen. I'm like, yeah,
See,
Satan.
I was kind of the exact opposite. Because I'm thinking that she is crazy, or there is some kind of explanation to it.
I never thought she was crazy, and I thought it telegraphed it so poorly.
Yeah,
I thought it telegraphed
I'm sure that's kind of like a first time experience kind of thing. If I watched it now, I probably would probably not even like it as much, just because I knew what's going on.
I think you're both wrong. I don't think it's as bad as you think it is, Mike, and I don't think it's as good as you think it is, Nate. But
Yeah, no, I can see really where Nate's coming from. I think it was just because when we initially saw it, I think we were both expecting different things. I think that's why I liked Ty West's House of the Devil a lot more than I like Rosemary's Baby, because it was slightly in the same vein, but it just did it so well.
It has less 80s cheesiness.
It has less 80s cheesiness while still being 80s nostalgic at the same time, which is really hard to do, which is why Ty West...
Well, I'd like to hear if you both have a book.
You haven't given us a fucking movie, or a book for that matter. What's your movie?
Both of your movies have affected my movie and book.
Oh, no.
And I'm going to give what was going to be my movie and book. I had two options. Both of them were a book and a movie based on it. One of my options was Silence of the Lambs. Since you have both given a movie, I'm going to give Silence of the Lambs as my movie, not my book. When it comes around back to my book was my actual first choice for both movie and book, but I'm going to pick as just my book. But Silence of the Lambs I'm picking as my movie. And here's why, and here's also why I'm not picking the book. In the book, Hannibal Lecter is a little too much of a cartoon character.
Yeah,
in the red version, Hannibal Lecter's eyes are red.
That's stupid.
Which in the film, on the box cover, I think his eyes are red.
Yeah, they are.
But in the actual film,
no, he's
they're
an
blue.
actual human
They're
being.
blue.
Yeah.
Also, his teeth are sharpened to points in the book. That's taken out of the movie.
That's too much.
Now, for what it's
he's
worth,
Christopher Lloyd's character from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
I'm not going to bash the book too much. The book is actually very excellent and has many elements better than the movie. Here's why I think Silence of the Lambs could be the greatest horror movie of all time. Silence of the Lambs is not a clear, straight horror movie, but what it is 100% horrifying. Mm-hmm. At any moment, Anthony Hopkins isn't horrifying.
Buffalo Bill.
And Buffalo Bill. I'm not going to get the actor's name, which is what's sad. Captain
Stottlemyre.
Captain
Stottlemyre. There you go.
But he's truly creepy as Buffalo Bill, and Buffalo Bill is clearly the villain. It's much like if you watch any of the Hannibal movies, or at least any of the really good ones, Manhunter, Red Dragon, obviously the same movie, or Silence of the Lambs, you're going to see Hannibal is terrifying, and yet Hannibal is helping you fight something worse. Mm-hmm. For one thing, that's one reason why the movie is great. Hannibal Lecter is disturbing, terrifying, disgusting, and outright evil. And yet, without Hannibal Lecter, you won't catch Buffalo Bill, who is also all of these things, and in a sense, and then some, because Buffalo Bill is... It's hard to say. Is Buffalo Bill or Hannibal Lecter more evil? Hannibal Lecter is a thought-out, processed, cold, calculating evil. Buffalo Bill is insane.
That's exactly it.
Because I think you can
control the Hannibal Lecter because he appeals to reason in some sense. But the Buffalo Bill is way more. He's just insanity. Like you can't reason with that. Yeah.
But on the other hand, once Hannibal Lecter's out, can you control him? How much can you control him? Because while he appeals to reason, he's also clearly willing to ignore it.
Yeah.
It's whereas Buffalo Bill can't even appeal to it. Hannibal Lecter can ignore it. Hannibal Lecter's like a more powerful evil, and Buffalo Bill is
Hannibal Lecter can switch between both.
Yes.
Which is more dangerous.
And so you have these two incredibly evil characters. You need one to fight the other. There's a lot of creepiness in that. Most importantly, though, obviously, you have Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter.
One of the greatest actors on the planet. I will say, though, I think, and the only reason I really disagree with you on this, I love Silence of the Lambs. It's a great movie.
Okay.
And some of the sequels were really, really good. But I think where...
I'm not going to get into those. I'm just talking Silence of the Lambs.
I think where Silence of the Lambs, where its biggest influence is not in horror movies, it's in television. Because you have obviously the first one is Hannibal, the show that's running right now, but to probably a greater extent really is the show Dexter, where you have this evil. Because since Silence of the Lambs, how many movies have you seen that were legitimately great or even good that really just picked up on that trope of you have this evil?
Sure.
And
you have to
side with them to do it. There's one or two, maybe. I can't think of any even off the top of my head.
I won't fight that.
But I think it's you get that trope.
I'm not gonna say that Silence of the Lambs is great only because it establishes that trope in movies. I'm saying it's great because it plays that trope to a degree. That Silence of the Lambs is not a movie you walk out going, "Oh, we defeated evil," or "Oh, the killer was back for a final scare." You walk out going, "Oh, we defeated evil, but at what cost. Mike, I'd like to hear your book and then Nathan's book.
Unless Nathan would want to go first. I mean, I'll give my book.
Yeah, I'll go first this time. Because, I mean,
Yeah,
I
no,
ceded
go
to you
ahead.
the first time. So, I think I'm going to have to say Lovecraft this time. Either The Mountains of Madness or Colored Out of Space. I think
man.
I'm leaning toward Colored Out of Space, though.
Okay.
Because that one is legitimately terrifying. I was reading, the first time I read it, it was kind of late at night. I think Kim was working on, either an article or some kind of paper, and I was just up late. Like, I was like, oh yeah, I'll stay up with you until you finish this thing. And so I was reading it, and it was like late at night, and I was legitimately getting scared. And like, that's not something that happens, especially with things I read, but it was legitimately terrifying, and I really like the idea of just like this otherworldly thing coming in and just like fucking up everything without us even understanding anything about it. Which that kind of links back to the same thing I was saying about Lovecraft, but I think it's really, really realized in The Color Out of Space. And the moment in Color Out of Space that really hits me the most, and maybe that's just like disturbing images or something, but like there's a part where he talks about like people are driving on this old country road, and there's like a rabbit that runs across a road that looks wrong. And like, that's all it says. Like, just like, it looks out of this world, unworldly. It doesn't describe it in anything like further than that, but that already just, for me, that brings up so many terrifying images of just this creature that's so bizarre and so just like, you can't comprehend it and so disturbing. That's what gets me with that, because I feel like that whole book is like that, or the whole Color Out of Space. But yeah, so that one's probably my favorite Lovecraft, but I really like Mountains of Madness. The build-up is immensely long. Like, there's so many things of him just like, I'm a scientist going around this mountain. Look at these rocks. Look at these, like, archaeological digs. And it's not interesting, but the payoff is, like, enhanced, I think, at least my opinion, by that super long build-up. But no, I like Color Out of Space better. That's the one I'm going with as a number one.
Okay.
Yeah, I get that one.
Writing?
I've actually got two that I'm torn between. One isn't a traditional book. And I'll go with that one first. A comic book by Mike Mignola. It's a BPRD, The Plague of Frogs. I'm just Mignola for life. Like, he is, I think, probably one of the best artists. He comes up with some of the best storylines. But really, throughout, like, the biggest key to this is that the heroes do things that are always the best, essentially, to their knowledge, it's the best thing they could be doing. And yet they're always getting fucked. It's just the hopelessness of the entire endeavor.
Okay.
Especially when you get to past Plague of Frogs and onto the newer storyline, which is Hell on Earth. I mean, if that doesn't give you any indication, then, you know, they go from this Plague of Frogs to Hell on Earth. That really isn't anything other than that. Plus, it's got some amazing fucking art to go along with it. It's not Mignola art, but it's heavily influenced by Mignola, and it's got some other really good artists on it. But as far as just straight literature, this is mine. And I think this made probably the biggest impact on me of any horror novel I've read, but it was probably the novel of Lata Kamarata Ina, or Let the Right One In, or for American audiences, Let Me In. That was fucked up. Like, it was legitimately fucked up. And I think that it was just so messed up. And for those of you who haven't seen the differences between the American Let the Right One In and or Let Me In versus Let the Right One In, there are differences in the movie, but the book goes further. The book is significantly more fucked, and I think that's what, for me, because it was a foreign translation, for some reason I prefer foreign translations. I don't know why, because it seems like when they're translated, they seemed a little bit more fucked up than like native language speakers, because there's really, I don't know if it's just a translation issue, whether it's like, oh, there's this long word here that we can't translate into English, so we're gonna have to describe it in fucking detail.
Yeah.
But there are times in that book where I'm just uncomfortable. You know, I like to think that I'm pretty jaded, but for something to make me uncomfortable is just out of the ordinary. I couldn't be comfortable reading that book. And I couldn't put it down. It was a freight train moving right towards me of fucked upness.
I think both of those are excellent choices.
Yeah.
I do. I think both of those are excellent choices. I think The Color Out of Space is an excellent example of an early sort of terrifying. It's terrifying how nondescript it is. And I think Let Me In is terrifying in how, well, it's terrifying on levels. It's terrifying. It has like sexual and otherwise societal levels of terrifying.
Yeah.
But it's also just a creepy book overall. So my example is embarrassing, but I'm going classic just like I did with Silence of the Lambs. This is the one I was going to pick for my book and movie, and I'm picking the book only because the movie, people argue, hasn't aged well. It's hard to argue Silence of the Lambs has not aged well. Silence of the Lambs has aged fine. There's not enough special effects in it for it to age poorly. Mm-hmm. This movie, and I think you might both have a guess as what I'm doing, the movie version has aged poorly only because of special effects constraints. The book doesn't have that and has aged perfectly. The best horror book of all time is The Exorcist.
Damn. No, I knew
that. I haven't read the book.
The book is... Now there's one book I might pick before it. It's by an author named Malachi Martin. He wrote Hostage to the Devil, which is sort of narrative accounts based on interviews with exorcists and with possessed people, or formerly possessed people, of exorcisms. Hostage to the Devil is the most terrifying, horrifying, over-the-top, oh my god, especially if you're Catholic or even if you believe in possession at all. It's the most terrifying book you could ever conceivably read, period. Outside of those situations, it's still creepy, without a doubt. However, it is a factual, and again, if you're not Catholic, you won't agree with this, but it's a factual-based book about exorcisms and possessed people. So when we're getting into fiction, when we're getting into what is really, when you consider horror as a genre, you're not considering fact, I would call The Exorcist the perfect example. The movie, I think, is excellent. The movie does suffer from, over time, the special effects especially degrade.
That doesn't bother me, though. Like,
it doesn't bother me, but it bothers some people, you know?
Yeah. I can look beyond it and just see the point that they were getting, and it's still terrifying. Like, just because of the special effects, like, we can do better things now doesn't, like, take away from it.
I think that does catch people, though.
To be fair, I'm on the other side of the fence than you guys on that one, because some of these old horror movies I never saw growing up, so I didn't really get them. I wasn't terrified by them as a child, and so when I saw them as an adult, I'm like, oh, that's really funny, that effect. And it just took me out of it. Okay. And I can see why people say that.
The book avoids
I appreciate what they tried to do, but it takes me out of it.
The book avoids that, especially because certain scenes aren't as prominent in the book. The vomiting scene, which is such a big deal in the movie. My head spins around backwards, I vomit. That's not really prominent in the book. Whereas the book has two interesting concepts. One, the book is even more realistic than the movie. The movie has some realistic moments in terms of, the priest thinking about whether or not he's lost his faith and things like that. Well, the book develops that more because the author is very Catholic. In the film, there's a very famous scene where one of the priests is playing piano. There's a party at the mother's house. Everyone's singing along with the priest playing piano. Reagan comes downstairs and pisses on the floor after telling the astronaut that he's going to die up in space. In the book, before this same scene happens, but before it happens, the priest playing piano and there's a second priest at the party have an argument. The argument is clearly making fun of Thomists and Jesuits, each for thinking the other is better. Now, in the book, it's presented in such a way that your average person can get it a little bit, but especially if you're Catholic, and even more so if you have any understanding of the Thomist/Jesuit infighting, it's hilarious. But it brings the characters, even if you don't understand that controversy, and even if you're not Catholic, it brings the characters to life in a very real way. Because of that, everything that happens in it comes across as it's again with Silence of the Lambs, the movie version. When you unsharpen Hannibal Lecter's teeth and unredden his eyes, he's a realistic character. He's believable. Every character in The Exorcist is believable. And so when the possession happens, and it helps that Blady, not Friedkin, the director, but Blady, the author, is Catholic. He writes it as if it's just straight real. And because he believes that this is possible. And because of that, whether or not you're Catholic, that believability comes through, and the book becomes believable. The characters are believable, and that makes it, beyond the fact that it has all the great horror moments The Exorcist has, plus many that put the scenes in the film to shame, either because they couldn't be filmed or because they wouldn't make as much sense to people outside of, they don't appeal as visually as they do writtenly. It is impossible to read the book and not have it come across as terrifying. And I will say, admittedly, I'm biased. I'm a Catholic. If you're not Catholic, or even if you are and just don't believe in demonic possession, the terror of the book will be immediately decreased. But I don't think it'll be nullified.
So Nathan Gutman, author of Bill the Fly on Amazon for $2.99 on Kindle and $7.95 for print, which we will have a contest for the next 2 weeks.
You can win a free edition.
You could print a signed free copy in print.
Signed copy. Yes. And I'll say something really nice and really polite, just to make sure that...
Nathan Gutman, you have the final word on All Downhill.
I'll say it very dramatically. I became immensely sober while I watched Hannibal Lecter spoon into a living vessel's brain and eat it. He puts it on a frying pan and then eats it.
This has been All Downhill.
For more information on the topics discussed in this episode and details on how to win a signed copy of Build a Fly, visit alternative-internet.com/alldownhill. For advertising information, contact Patrick Simmons via email, patrick@alternative-internet.com. For more information on Nate Gutman, visit nategutman.com, NateGutman.com. The music used in this episode has been Somewhere Back There by Nate Gutman from the Scrap Paper EP. This has been All Downhill.
And my phone used to sing, but now it just rings 'cause you never call me. You say it's for the best, but I cannot pass the same judgment.